This is Josh Raven with the Daily Dot here at IEM Cologne, joined by coach turned caster, but probably turning back to coach, YamatoCannon. He's here doing some analysis, and first off, we will talk about IEM later, but for now I'm going to keep it real. We're going to go back to you, because there have been rumours going around of your departure of Roccat following the whole lineup. First off, can we get any comment on those, or are you keeping your mouth shut?
Well, currently I'm still a part of Roccat, and the only thing I can say is I'll be part of the LCS.
So currently you are still a part of Roccat, officially speaking. However, the rest of the team is not completely donezo over. Can you give us any insight into why this may have happened, considering that Roccat was looking fairly decent last year?
Well, the thing is, we had very, very high-profile players in the shape of Nuktak, Vander, and Jankos. So it's simply because player careers tend to be very short and sweet in terms, if you compare it to other sports. So with that in mind, you have to take those opportunities you get, and I completely understand the decisions.
Some of those players have gone on to join some of the new teams forming in the European LCS, things like Vitality, H2K, who are also here, and we're looking at quite a strong top 4, top 5 in the European LCS next year. What do you make of these teams? Is there any sort of ranking you think you can give us this early on, or how you think it's going to pan out for them?
I think it's very, very hard to say right off the bat. It's I completely agree with the consensus that we're going to have this top 4, but I think kind of deciding who's going to be first is going to be very, very hard, because if you take a look at the rosters, I feel like they are very, very similar. But based off of this event, I feel like H2K has impressed me a lot. On paper, I rated Vitality very, very high, but now it's like with H2K's performance now against Ever and of course against C9, I feel like they also have a shot to be first in the LCS.
Well, you mentioned Vitality there briefly. I was going to mention them because that's essentially a whole new lineup coming together featuring one of your former players in Nuktak as well. Sometimes when these things happen, the team can just crash and burn, like we've seen it happen before. Are you a bit more optimistic about Vitality? I know most of the fans are.
Well, the thing is, that is also the case. Like, you can predict that we have a top 4, but we've seen in the past, like for example, Elements, it was on paper this powerhouse roster, but it fell apart. So with that in mind, it's like you can make predictions, but you cannot predict the future 100%.
And well, let's take things to IEM now, because obviously you're here doing some work, doing some analysis on the desk, doing it fantastically, I might say as well. Unfortunately, not doing so fantastically, well, kind of is Europe, crashing out in both semi-finals, even though many people thought maybe Fnatic with Spirit in there could make the finals. H2K with the new lineup looking good, but not quite good enough. What did you make of their performances? Do you think they could have gone that little bit further?
I feel like Fnatic, their biggest issue definitely was the draft. They were sticking to the Nidalee. They picked up the Sion multiple times into a Fiora, and that is a very, very horrible matchup. I feel like I would potentially blame the draft. I felt like the first game that they played, they showed a lot of potential in terms of what they can do in terms of decision making, because that was the big question: will the communication kind of stick? Will it work somehow? And the first game showed that there's a lot of potential in this roster, and I feel like the beauty of this roster, I also mentioned it on the analyst desk, is the previous Fnatic that we had, it was so centered around one strategy. It was playing around top lane. And with that in mind, with the addition of Noxiac, I feel like they have the ability to play around the bot lane as well. And I feel like coming into the next season, it's going to be more competitive. So you could almost potentially say that maybe this Fnatic could do better than the previous Fnatic. But something that you need to keep in mind when I say that is, of course, I'm not saying that, oh my god, this team is going to get second place at Worlds simply because they got into the semi-finals. But overall, the competition is getting harder, and it is very important to maintain like a dynamic strategy and not only set to one thing.
Okay, and we'll wrap it up towards the end now, but I do want to give you like a sort of fun question to end things off. So as you said, officially you're still with Roccat, okay? So let's go to a hypothetical. Roccat come to you tomorrow, say, be our head coach. Money is no problem. You can have as much money as you want. What lineup do you build with the free agents around Europe, Korea, North America? You have 2 imports if you want.
Well, if money is not a question, then of course it's like I can buy players all I want, right? Well, it's kind of a tough question to say right off the bat. Well, obviously I would put Faker there. I would snag Marin as well. Why not? You know, that are my 2 Koreans, I guess. And looking at the other positions, I feel like if you take a look, I have mid lane Phil, top lane Phil, so I need to think for a second. Like jungle, I feel like Janko, Shook, Svenskeren, they're all up there. They're all high caliber jungles, and they're all up there. And if you take a look at ADC, I'm thinking Nils, I'm thinking Reckless, I'm thinking Forgiven. And on support, I would obviously bring back Yellow Star. And with that in mind, it's like, to summarize, I feel like the European pool of talent that has remained in Europe, it's like a lot of the players I've mentioned have remained in Europe. And to summarize, I would say that Europe is still looking freaking strong.